Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Cryptopsy, An Insatiable Violence, out June 20th on Season of Mist. The album has 8 tracks, 33 minutes in length, and this is the band's 9th full-length studio album. They are a Canadian death metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, the album offers two different ideas, or at least it gives you two different perceptions of what it really is. The first perception that you get of the album is that it's a very compact record. But I feel like that experience kind of comes from having 8 songs and being 33 minutes in length. It's a short album. Short albums normally tend to be more compact by nature. So I think that's where that experience or where that vibe is coming from. The individual songs on this record are very dynamic, which makes for a more dynamic album all around. So it's a compact album because of the design that it offers, but it's a very dynamic and very fluid record from the song choices that the album has. When you put these things together, what you allow yourself to create is an album that doesn't overburden the listener, which is something that could happen with an album as brutal, as heavy as this one, as relentless as this one is. It's very common for albums that have that sort of sound, that sort of experience, to kind of become cumbersome by the time you reach the bottom end of the record. You almost feel like you've heard those songs already before. There's almost like nothing new to be discovered. The album just loses a little bit of its allure the longer it progresses. This record doesn't have that issue because of being 33 minutes in length. It also doesn't have that issue because the songs, like I said, are very dynamic individually. So these two elements together really allow you to better see the forest from the trees, giving an incredible playability to the overall album, really bringing that playability to the surface, allowing you to digest this album a little bit easier, which is going to make you come back to it time and time and time again. Once you get down to the sound of the album, I gotta say I have two different experiences with this record, and I advise you guys to learn from my mistake and not repeat it. My mistake was, first time I listened to this record, I listened to it in the car on my drive to work. The sound in the car is never going to be as great as having a good stereo system at home or having a good pair of headphones. So the experience that I got in the car was that this album was very dense, way denser than what I was expecting it, with not a lot of definition. That is not true. That is not the case. The moment I had the time to sit down and really dive deep and really digest the album, listen to it with quality headphones, I was able to see the quality of the production on this album. It's outstanding. The production level allows each and every single element of the sound, of the vocals, to have their own lane. They intertwine at times, sure, but every element has its own lane, which allows every element to have a little bit more room to breathe. It allows the record overall to be richer, to have more texture of sound, to be more engaging, and allowing the brutality of the record to still be present. These elements make that brutality a little bit more accessible, making this still a brutal Cryptopsy sounding album, but perhaps one of the most accessible albums by them in a very long time. The production really helps with that. And you can look, for example, at the bass sound on this album. I can't remember the last time Cryptopsy released a record where the bass sounded as good as it does on this record, that has the impact that it has on this record, that has as much room to breathe and to showcase itself on this record. And we're talking about 8 songs in 33 minutes. There's not a lot of record here. And to give the bass as much space as it was given, I think it increases the quality of the album, because the bass on this record, it really helps emphasize some of the darker moments of the songs, and it also helps to give a little bit more substance to connect better the guitar sound with the drum sound. A drum sound that's always going to be one of the key pillars of any Cryptopsy album. This record is no different. But I think the main difference here is, while perhaps the drums are still the leading force of the overall sound, they gave all the other elements a little bit more room to shine, and they give the other elements a chance at some times throughout the songs to be in the driver's seat. And I think that's a very important element that still gives the drums width, it still gives the drums substance, still gives the drums heaviness, power, protagonism, if you will, but it shares it a little bit more, and you see that with the introduction of the bass being as predominant as it is, and you're going to see that as well on the guitar sound. Incredible guitar sound on this album. You have the thicker sound, you have the chuggier sound, you have the more crisp, clean sound. The guitars on this album sound phenomenal. They have a lot of layers, they have a lot of texture, they are very rich. This is definitely not a live guitar sounding album by Cryptopsy. The guitar sound on this record has a little bit more work in it that you can't just have with one single guitar. There's a lot of layering here, and that gives the album that width. It helps with that width, but it also helps with that richness and obviously that texture. I really like how the guitars sound throughout this entire record. Now, when it comes to the vocal performance, even Matt was different on this album. And when I mean different, I don't mean that he's changing his style, his vocal approach. You're still going to get the screams, you're still going to get that really deep growling voice that Matt has. But I felt like his pronunciation of the words at times were a lot clearer on this album than on previous records. You felt the words differently. You actually were able to follow the words around, the lyrics around a lot throughout the entire album. And that to me also elevates the overall quality of the record. It also elevates that ability to have a more clear sounding album all around without losing any of the overall brutality that the band has to have on their albums. So when you look at this record, you're bound to say, as Gamora burns, you need to take a seat, because an Insatiable Violence is here, and this album surpasses a Juno winner. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but this record is not just a few steps forward, it's about a leap forward from where the previous album landed. Way better production on this record, way better attention to the detail as far as the sound elements is concerned, and Matt perhaps delivering his best vocal performance that I've seen with Cryptopsy. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Fool's Last Acclaim. The drums and guitars on this track are absolutely killer, but the bass really adds this great texture to the song. This is a track that you're definitely going to notice the bass sound, and it has an impact on the track. The vocals are insane. They are as intense, as driven as the sound is. Super brutal song, super brutal vocals, very driven track. The drums add a lot of width to the way the song is put together. The guitars are able to drive through, sometimes matching the width, but also driving through, really becoming a little bit more penetrating with some chuggier moments here and there, which allows the guitars to have a more open sound with a more chuggier riff, not as driven, not as narrow, and that really helps break down the song. It really helps break down the dynamics of the track, making it a little bit more volatile. A song that is a lot easier to digest, more manageable from that standpoint, but it takes nothing away from how brutal and heavy this track overall is. Then you have a song like The Art of Emptiness. Very dark opening with a bass there with the sound really creating a sense of darkness, but not just dark from a soundscape point of view, it's dark also from a vocal standpoint. The way the song really opens sets that tone. Then it becomes a more brutal layer texture track, feeling at times a little bit compressed, like it's just really narrowing things down. There is almost no room for this song to breathe. It's really about intensity, it's about aggression, and it's about thickness. And when you have all of that, you're really creating a sonic brutal assault in your ears, and it's a track that never really feels like it has pockets to break or pockets to dissipate a little bit of that heaviness and brutality. So it's a relentless track on all fronts. It has a magnificent solo in it. Maybe that is the one moment where the song really breaks, but outside of that, it's just a very methodic, heavy song that has a lot of brutality built into it. Last but definitely not least, one of my favorite, if not the favorite song on the record, Our Great Deception. This is one of the biggest sounding songs on the album. If this song had a bunch of breakdowns and pig squeals, I would say that these guys are taking a page out of Lorna Shore's book, because this track has a lot of that atmosphere built into the track, that symphonic atmosphere that a lot of deathcore bands are using and a lot of death metal bands are also using these days. This song really starts with an atmospheric piece, and that atmosphere always lingers through the entire track. It's perhaps a little bit more noticeable once the guitar solo comes in, because the melody of the guitar solo really emphasizes that atmospheric piece that open up the track. So it's a more open, still heavy, Still brutal, still Cryptopsy, but it's definitely a more open sounding song, a larger sounding song because of it. This is it, Cryptopsy with an Insatiable Violence. Once again, out June 20th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.